Hi everyone. One of the biggest mysteries relating to King Arthur is the location of his supposed battles. The two most famous Arthurian battles are the Battle of Badon and the Battle of Camlan. They are two battles that are mentioned in history, literature and legend. One literary source that mentions these two battles is a Welsh medieval prose tale called Rhyd y Groes. In the story, a 12th century Welshman journeys back in time several centuries via a dream into the Arthurian world, where he meets Arthur shortly before one of his supposed battles was supposed to start. Now, this tale has been mined for details by modern day Arthur hunters who want to try and locate these battles as evidence to support their wider theory on the identity of Arthur. Now, if at this point you're having a bit of a sense of deja vu, it's because I've previously talked about this story in great detail in relation to Wilson and Blackett's suggestion that the Battle of Badon was described as being in the vicinity of Mynydd Badon near Llanganwyd. Now, I disagreed with them on that. I thought that the story gave a lot of topographic and toponymic evidence to place the battle there near Buttington, near Welshpool. But the other thing that I said in that video was that this was a fictionalised account of those events. It was part of a story about a dream. And it's important to remember that all the Arthurian information in this story happens within a dream sequence. And in dreams, events don't happen like they do in real life. Things happen in different places and in different times as well. And the story very much mimicked a real dream. So I concluded that Rhyd y Groes didn't have any valid information that would help us locate either the Battle of Badon or the Battle of Camlan, which was briefly mentioned at the start of the story as well. By the way, when it comes to Wilson and Blackett, I know that there's more to their theory about Badon being located here than just this source. There's actually a much longer tradition that places the Battle of Badon near Llanganwyd, and in my opinion, this is one of the most likely possibilities as to the location of the battle, but not because of the reason that Wilson and Blackett have given in that instance. Now, one of the better known theories that tries to identify Arthur with a historical person is The Lost Tomb of Arthur by Graham Phillips, published in 2016 by Bear & Company. And this is a bit of his biography on the blurb here. He's described as a former radio journalist and BBC broadcaster. Graham Phillips is a historical investigator and author of 13 books. And then it lists them there. He lives in England. I've really enjoyed the book on the whole. It's well written, it refers to a lot of interesting sources, and it's really engaging. And he's also got lectures on YouTube which are similarly very engaging, and he seems like a thoroughly decent chap. But the problem is, I think that he's completely misinterpreted Rhyd y Groes as it relates to the Battle of Camlan, and I want to correct it a bit. So what does this author say that Rhyd y Groes says about the location of Camlan? Well, Phillips has a whole chapter on Camlan, and leading up to the bit about Rhyd y Groes, he tries to deduce the location pretty inconclusively, based on other sources that mention Camlan. And then he comes to his ideas about Rhyd y Groes. And I'll just read out what he says. He describes it as one of the oldest surviving narratives to provide an actual location for the Battle of Camlan, and a very precise one at that. He goes on to say, the tale concerns a dream experienced by its central character, Rhonabwy, one of Madog's servants. That means Madog ap Meredydd, a historical prince of Powys from the mid-12th century, in which he goes back to the time of King Arthur. At the start of the vision, Rhonabwy meets a messenger from Camlan, who miraculously transports him to Arthur's camp immediately before the battle. Soon after, the hero meets Arthur. The story becomes a symbolic tale concerning good and evil, right and wrong, and the power of the church versus the power of kings. Although the latter part of the tale involves a mixed dreamscape concerning various episodes in Arthur's life, such as him receiving his sword, the Battle of Badon, and the formation of his court, all jumbled with complex symbolism, the location of the Battle of Camlan is quite specific. The tale ends before the commencement of the battle itself, and provides no details concerning the actual engagement. However, Arthur's encampment in the run-up to the battle, where he is joined by various troops of horsemen, is said to be at a ford specifically named as Rhyd y Groes, which crossed the river in the Hafren Valley a mile from his main forces. Phillips then goes on to describe where he's found a site that he believes to be the Rhyd y Groes, still has that name today, and it basically props up his theory that identifies Owain Ddantgwyn with the historical Arthur. But I think that Graham Phillips has got it wrong here. No toponymic or topographic details are given for the Battle of Camlan, and that battle is actually only briefly mentioned in the tale at the start of the dream sequence, and it's mentioned as being 7 years in the past. The conflict that is the subject of the story is the Battle of Baden, and the story is set near this battle site, and a lot of toponyms are given to help us locate it. The Battle of Baden, that is. So simply put, Phillips has confused the Battle of Baden with the Battle of Camlan. Now, in my previous video, I go into lots of details. I quote the original Welsh text, I show the original manuscript. I think it's fairly conclusive where the text described the Battle of Baden. So go and have a look at that video for the full details. But what I'll do now is I'll just sort of briefly quote and paraphrase Sioned Davies' excellent translation of Rhyd y Groes, just to illustrate the points that I'm making. And this edition is available on archive.org for free. You have to sign in, but you can actually see the text for free. It's considered to be one of the Mabinogion. That's a compilation of medieval Welsh stories. They probably weren't thought of as a collection in the medieval period, but for some reason they did become grouped together. But there's not much really that connects Rhyd y Groes with the other stories as part of this collection. Anyway, so let's have a look at the text. So as I said, this character, Rhonabwy, who seems to be a literary creation, has a dream and is transported from the 12th century back into the Arthurian era. So as soon as sleep entered Rhonabwy's eyes, he was granted a vision, and he and his companions were travelling across Maes Groeg, and his inclination and intent, so he thought, was towards Rhyd y Groes on the Hafren. They then meet someone called Iddog, son of Mynio, also known as Iddog Cordd Prydain, and he explains to them that he was called that because he stirred up trouble between Arthur and Medrawd at the Battle of Camlan. So it was Iddog that stirred up the trouble between Medrawd and Arthur, according to him. And then he says, "But 3 nights before the end of the Battle of Camlan, I left them and came to Llech Las in Prydain to do penance. And I was there for 7 years doing penance, and I was shown mercy." Okay, so the Battle of Camlan must have been at least 7 years in the past for this to have happened. So none of the events mentioned as being current in this story relate to Camlan at all. And nothing more is mentioned of Camlan, and there were no details at all to help us locate it. So then Rhonabwy and his companions travelled across the great plain of Groeg to Rhyd y Groes on the Hafren, and a mile from the ford, on each side of the road they could see huts and tents, and the mustering of a great host. They came to the edge of the ford and saw Arthur sitting on a flat meadow below the ford, and then it's mentioned to them that they need to be at the Battle of Baden shortly, referred to as Gwaith Faddon. So then they set off towards somewhere called Cefn Digoch. They ford the Hafren River, that's the River Severn, and they look up the Hafren Valley. And it's implied that nearby they dismounted below Caer Faddon, that's the fort of Baden. But the battle doesn't happen in the end, and they call a truce with Osla Gallechfawr for a fortnight and a month. Okay, so this text that refers to a place called Rhyd y Groes, it's implied that this is in the vicinity of the Battle of Baden, and there's absolutely no grounds whatsoever to go along with Graham Phillips' theory that this was referring to the location of the Battle of Camlan that had long passed, and there's no grounds at all in the text to place it at somewhere called Rhyd y Groes. But don't go thinking that there's any historical information here. This is a fictitious story that draws on some aspects of history, but I don't think there's any real historical basis for putting the events in these places. And it's a shame really that Graham Phillips has completely misunderstood this text. A lot of his theory does hinge on this, and he's got it completely wrong, unfortunately. And there's no sort of ambiguities in this text that would open the door to his Camlan suggestion. Now, what I'm going to do shortly is another feature on the Battle of Camlan, but this time I'll be showing you where I think the battle was really fought, one of the most devastating events in British history. I'll actually be visiting the site, so keep an eye out for that because I'm going to be publishing it shortly.